Good evening, everybody. How we doing? Another Paranormal Monkey podcast. Good evening, Alexa. I'm a little bit red-faced, so I apologize for that. Just literally got back from a week of camping, so with wonderful people, had a really great time. But lots of high winds, sunshine, lots of mead, and lots of. It's been a really good few days, but I'm absolutely shattered. But yeah, that's hence why the redness. So I'm glowing. Anyway, hope you're doing well. Hope you've enjoyed your bank holiday weekend or still enjoying it, what's left of it. Obviously, we have the lovely Paul Goddard in this evening. And obviously, as ever, as we always do, I'll always make sure that we get across your kind of questions at the end. So in the last 10, 15 minutes of the chat, it's a good idea now to kind of get a good question ready for him. About past life regression, if you have your thoughts about past life regression, if you've used a hypnotherapist, if you've got any thoughts on reincarnation or anything in the chat that crops up, please do kind of let us know, because I will try and get that in at the end for Paul. So without further ado, let's get him in. Good evening, Paul.
Good evening, Justin. I'm really interested about your camping trip now. Sounds fantastic.
Oh, it was amazing. Basically, it was with a bunch of like heathens. So it was lots of mead and lots of drinking and lots of it was hilarious. Actually, it was really, really good fun. Okay,
fantastic.
Now then, so for obviously, I know you've obviously been part of the paranormal scene. You've done lots and lots of paranormal conventions in the UK. Obviously, this will go out to anybody who wants to have a look, manage to catch you. So in terms of your career and where your standpoints and your role, like I said, I do this for everybody, and I know it's really hard to kind of condense your life into about a couple of minutes. But for those that don't know, you just want to say a little bit about yourself.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So I've been interested in hypnosis for a very long time. In fact, I actually tried very unsuccessfully to hypnotize some of my class friends out of desperation, grabbing a plug from one of the sinks and swinging it in front of one of my friends' face. It didn't go that well. But I've also loved all sorts of different things, snooker, media I've really loved, and radio and music. I'm still a big music fan now. And at one point in my life, I used to DJ just part-time in some local clubs and pubs around. And my goal was to DJ in Cafe de Mar. That's what I'd have loved to have done.
That's a good target. Yeah.
Yeah. I would have loved that so much. But I was only stuck to the very small venues, and I wasn't really pushing myself forward to the bigger venues because of a fear of rejection. So I got the book whilst I was away, Paul McKenna, Change Your Life in 7 Days. Actually, just got it if anyone's interested in books. So I looked there a few years ago. So it's a few years old, this copy, and well worn and well battered. And it made me feel a lot more confident. I started pushing myself forward and being more brave in who I spoke to. But then my dad became quite unwell with cancer. And from that point, he was listening to a particular healing hypnosis disc, pretty much when the doctors and said there's not much else we can do for you but to make you comfortable. Yeah. And he loved listening to this hypnosis disc. It was a time when he could take 25 minutes out. He got a lot of benefit from it, and he was always happy. In fact, when he was in hospital, sometimes some of the nurses or other members of staff would come in and start sort of talking to him when they had like relationship issues or something going on in their life, just because my dad had such a good sort of positive attitude. And, he was hoping that he could potentially heal himself. But unfortunately, he had got a blood clot that went to his lung.
Yeah.
That was the reason why he passed. But even though he was just so happy throughout, I thought, this is what I want to do with my life. I want to make people happy and move them from a stuck state where they're feeling either depressed, feeling low self-esteem, whatever it is, and get them to a desired state. Because as much as I love music, as much as I loved DJing, and I will still always have that special place in my heart for that, I thought, this is something that can really move people's lives forward rather than just happiness for a night in a nightclub or in a bar. So I got into neuro-linguistic programming. Paul McKenna does a lot of neuro-linguistic programming, which stands, so that's NLP for short. So it's neuro, not just your mind, but your neurological system. Linguistic, the language we use, and the programming part, it takes on people, there's like computer programs. And if you don't like the program that's in, you can rewrite it. And also as well, we have like unconscious programs we run anyway. Think about tying our shoes now. A lot of us don't have to think how to do it. It's just automatic. So it's getting in and rewriting that program to think more positive. Hypnosis definitely goes hand in hand with that. And I did an NLP course, also went to London and did a couple of courses, did one with Robert Dilts, that was really good. And several courses in hypnotherapy. And one of the parts of the first part of hypnotherapy that I took was past life regressions. It was a little part of the whole course that I was learning. And I enjoyed it. I found it fascinating because I was always interested in the paranormal. I would go out and do paranormal investigations. So that did interest me. I was actually on a paranormal investigations. Just didn't think that I was going to do much with the past life regressions initially, just, it might be fun to do this every now and again. But I was in a paranormal investigation. Anybody that does paranormal investigation knows there's also an awful lot of time when you're just waiting around in complete and utter darkness. So I said to the organizer who put together this particular paranormal investigation, do you mind if I have a little space where if anybody wants to have a past life regression, I could do it? Because at that stage, I was only just got the certificate. I was still learning the art and the science of hypnosis. And I had a nice little audience, and it was my good friend, Lynn Sindri. She's Gloucester Ghost Walks. She was running some events and said, I'd love to book you to do some past life regressions on people. So that started, and I got more interest, and it kind of sort of snowballed eventually. So that's how I got into past lives. But I'm always interested in learning more about past lives, both believer and skeptical. I think it's really important to have everything that could potentially be going on. And I can't say I'm an expert in the whole field behind what is reincarnation. I'm still sort of learning. To be honest, think about it, a lot of scientists still aren't 100% sure why we sleep. I mean, if you put it into Google, why do we sleep, you'll find out that scientists are still a bit unsure why. They've got lots of theories, but a bit unsure why people actually sleep. So I just think the more work that I've done, the more questions I have than answers through past lives. But it's been a fascinating journey.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to say, past life regression is one area which is, to me, just sounds fascinating. I've got to say, I know very, very little about it. I'm not even going to pretend to know anything about it because I really don't. Other than the fact, I find the whole idea of having a past life, or the idea that you can be put under hypnosis and then start to recall events from a previous life. Now, there will be critics and there will be doubters, and I will get onto that later. What I'll find out first of all is, I think maybe just we'll talk about the benefits a bit later on. But in terms of anybody who wants to go to you as a client and think, okay, I'm quite interested in this, what is the process of being of past life regression? If they came to you, what were they likely to expect or receive in terms of the because obviously it's quite a scary thing, basically, because it's this, they've got no idea what they may say to you and what images may come forward. So how do you put them at ease, and what is the process of it?
Well, first of all, I think people are very fearful of hypnosis because they've seen programs on TV, like the Avengers. And even now you see hypnosis on television and films, and it's not really what hypnosis is like. First of all, the hypnotist guides someone into a hypnotic state. This is called pacing and leading. You notice somebody relaxing a bit more, you add in more suggestions to help the person relax. You can do an instantaneous induction. I do that on very, very rare occasions. Even then, you plant the suggestions to allow somebody to create that state themselves. But first of all is to let people know that their deepest, darkest secrets will not come out for any reason, that they are fearful they're going to say something. They're not going to say it in front of me. You've still got your subconscious mind always protecting you and keeping you safe. Your subconscious mind and your mind knows what you don't want to divulge.
Yeah.
For any reason during the hypnosis, if anybody wants to open their eyes, they certainly can do. They can take themselves straight out of it. They're not going to be stuck into hypnosis until the hypnotist clicks their fingers or gives the code word, whatever it is, to bring them out of hypnosis. And for the majority of people, it will be like reviewing memories. So if I got somebody to close their eyes in the couch that I have them led back on, the recliner, and I said, truly remember a fantastic holiday you went on a few years ago. Sometimes some people can have it quite clear, these memories, and that's how the memories will come to people. It's more like reviewing memories. And I would have said that's how it always is. But I have had one or two people over the years say, wow, that was so real. It was almost like I was there. But I tend to find those people that have a really vivid past life regression are the people that are like, bring it on. They really want it. Those are a bit fearful. It's usually more sketchy. But even the people I want it to be like I'm there. The majority of people, it's just like reviewing memories. And, if anybody feels like I'll get a bit emotional, I will watch them. I'll also ask people beforehand, how emotional do you want to get to it? Because, some people, if they get too emotional, I want to bring them out of it, and I will watch people throughout. But I do get some people saying, oh, no, I want to feel the emotions. I want to have a good cry. I wouldn't want to, but each their own. And it's important that what somebody wants to have from the session, that I can give them that during hypnosis. And something which is I'm proud myself on is always very important, that you guide someone through the past life regression experience. You never lead them by asking leading questions.
I was gonna. I'll come on to that after, because I know that is one of the criticisms of it, of skeptical people saying, well, you're just you're leading them into a scenario. By giving suggestions or leading them into a particular path, you're leading them into creating this event in their heads, which doesn't exist. You're kind of so we'll come on to that afterwards. But before we go into the skeptical side of it, obviously, being a hypnotherapist, we're talking a lot about therapy and helping clients. How does past life regression benefit the client?
Well, you get two groups of people: the ones that want to come to me just literally because they're absolutely curious, and other people feel that they want to use it as healing process, and maybe there's something potentially in a past life which is causing them to be stuck in this life. Some of the things that I've had are people drowning, and when they've been through the process of seeing themselves drown with somebody else, and I also make sure I do extra sort of healing work with that. So that's the way I do healing is as if I would do it in a therapeutic session. So it's talking, it's adding guided visualization in to help somebody heal from that. But, I've had people that have drowned in a previous life and their fear of water has gone. I mean, it's like with those things, it's like every single person that's had that, they lose their fear of water. That's not the case. But, it's happened quite a few times that people have said that to me, that it's helped. There's other things I can do in hypnosis to help with that. There's other emotional things. I can give you a whole list if you wanted to. Things.
What I find really interesting, because I've heard that before. This whole idea of, if somebody has an irrational fear of something, where actually in their life they've never had any issues, well, like you say, with water or lightning or whatever it is, but in terms of there's been no kind of trauma in childhood or anything like that, but say, well, could it possibly come from a past life? And also I've heard say that some people may be drawn to a particular period in history for an unknown reason, but obviously that can possibly be linked to a past life event. Do you see any credibility in that? Is that just have you heard of that before, and have you seen that?
I have. It tends to be opposite for me when somebody's particularly interested in a period. Not all the time, because some people do go back to that time. But I remember one particular moment, and it's okay because I talk about the clients that are happy for me to, or that have been on my YouTube channel, or that are demonstrations. I always make sure it's one of the first things that I find out people are happy for me to talk about a particular session. Most of the time, people just want it kept to themselves. But I remember doing a talk not that far down the road for me, actually. and there was a lady who was really fascinated in the Georgian period, and I reckon I must have been a grand lady in the Georgian period, and really kind of like hope, and then went into hypnosis, and she was a chimney sweep, which was completely and utterly different experience than she was expecting. So, you can throw in the suggestions to see if that is, but I'm very careful with if somebody wants to see why they have a fascination in that particular Georgian period or whenever it might be. If they specifically want a past life, I will sort of say we'll explore around that area. But, and when people sign a form, I always say you can never guarantee that what you're saying is actually a genuine past. I make no claim either way, So, but I will, mostly of people that have a fascination, I will put the suggestion in instead that they will go to the core reason why you have that fascination with that time. And it might not be exactly what people think, it might not be past life related. It could be a particular program was on TV that they watched with their parents and absolutely loved it. So there can be all sorts of different reasons. So that's the importance of when somebody comes to you, that it's more guiding, as I said before, rather than leading.
So obviously we'll go into, I think generally hypnosis is very misunderstood. Like you say, you talk about obviously like people may have experience of seeing a stage hypnotist, for instance. So that in terms of what you do, it is very different. In terms of there's like you say, there's going to be no kind of anything. In terms of the key difference is what you may have seen from like a stage hypnotist. Making somebody do something they don't particularly want to do, or that kind of that's not what you do. What do you think is the most misunderstood aspects associated with your field and what you do?
A lot of people still say to me now, some people can't be hypnotized. That's not true. I mean, not everybody does get regression. The majority of people do. 95%, I would say, people that come to me and have a past life regression actually will receive one. There's about 5% that don't get anything, and that's also on the booking form as well. But every single person can be hypnotized. The reason why that came out to begin with, because some hypnotism in the early days, there's lots of different inductions that you can do, and there was a kind of trend for a while of people having eye fixation inductions. I think some people think of it as a swinging watch. It doesn't, most of the time it's not swinging. Most of the time it's something just to have somebody to look at. It wears their eyes out, and it's a way into hypnosis. It's not actually that so much. It's just a suggestion you add in for the start of the hypnosis. But I have very sensitive eyes. I go around wearing sunglasses a lot, and I tend to find looking at a spot for a long period of time is very uncomfortable for me. It's not a pleasant induction into hypnosis. So I tend to not go very well or deeply at all into that sort of hypnosis. So when that was a trend for a while, people then were thinking, oh, some people aren't susceptible to hypnosis. And also as well, I think people have a misconception of what hypnosis is. I mean, most of the time when I have somebody in hypnosis, they'll feel relaxed. Their attention goes inwards, so they're more kind of focused on what you're saying, and they're not so much aware of the outside world going on. So you can hypnotize people, and I don't recommend it in noisier places. And once they're in, they'll just block out that sort of sound. But I think people really generally think that they're going to go into a zombie type state. The hypnotist has every single control. So if you told them to suddenly like streak out in the road in front of everybody, they would do it. You won't be able to do that at all. So I think that is a misconception that, is one, some people can't be hypnotized. Another one is that, that some people as well will be under complete and utter control. Also as well, usually very creative, imaginative people are brilliant hypnotic subjects, and they're some of the ones for health reasons that get the best benefits. So some people sort of say, oh, those that could be hypnotized have weak minds, and it's the opposite effect, really.
I was going to say if looking into kind of the skeptical side of it, that the skeptic would say, essentially, it's not a past life. It's somebody with a really good imagination, and those who are particularly creative and imaginative are more able to create and conjure this scenario. You know, the untapped power of your mind, your brain is incredibly powerful, and it is able to pick out whether it's prior knowledge that you already had. You know, it's a visit to a museum you may have been to 10 years ago, and you remember that, you know, your brain is able to remember certain details, and therefore under hypnosis you're able to create and conjure this if you're particularly imaginative. And that, and so people, if you do a quick, you can, Google search on terms of past life regression, that is always, people say, well, it's unscientific, it is purely somebody creating this. So in terms of, from your point of view, obviously you've got a very good kind of, so you're the perfect person to ask this one. Is this just the overactive imaginations of people, or do you think it's something more than that?
Well, I love the work of Dr. Ian Stevenson, who went around the world investigating children with spontaneous past life claims. They're the ones that come around and will start talking about another life they've had when they were older, when they lived in a big house, etc., all those different things. And he had different points of what could be going on. So it could be, because I make no claim either way. I have a load of different possible scenarios. It could be that it's your subconscious mind creating things. And I know that is certainly a possibility, because, and it came from, I must give credit where credit's due, my trainer Raymond Roberts. He came up with the concept of a hypno holiday. I kind of called it a hypnotic holiday. And whenever we was locked down, getting completely frustrated, I created on my YouTube channel a hypnotic holiday so people could go on their favorite places. So again, that's the mind completely making things up, but I was implanting suggestions that your mind would create a holiday for you. So it could be that. There is also something called cryptomnesia, which is like a source amnesia. And one of the interesting things of that is that this could be something that's going on with past life regression. It could be that someone is forgotten things consciously, but they're remembering when they're in hypnosis, maybe something they were told at school or read in a book ages ago. So this is why it's very important for me when I do my hypnosis, that the only suggestion I give is going into a life they've lived before that one. That's literally the only suggestion that I will give. I'll ask them to go forward, backwards, etc. in time, and just go to certain ages of their particular period that they're reliving. And this can certainly happen, because George Harrison created, and it's happened several times with different artists. George Harrison, My Sweet Lord, is almost identical music, actually is pretty much the identical music to the Cliftons, I think it is, and it's called He's So Fine. And in fact, he went to court, and the judge believed him that it was in his subconscious, this music, and he copied it unintentionally. He still got fined for it, because even if it's subconscious, you still copied somebody else's stuff. So perhaps it could be this going on. Now, I had somebody on one of my live demonstrations that I do. Now, he had a really fascinating past life on the Scharnhorst, which is a German U-boat, or was it just boat? Yes, and Scharnhorst anyway is what he was on. He was on it, and it got shot down, and that was his last memories in the Second World War. But I asked him to explore his childhood, and something which completely freaked him out, because he wasn't expecting it. So he did know a little bit, and I put that out because it's always important to be honest with everything that you do. He did know a little bit of history, but when he went back, he went to his father's shop, and his father sold clocks and fixed clocks. And I said, what clock is he working on now? Because his father had one. He said, it's an ornate clock, and it's a Osberg clock. And I just sort of carried on. Then afterwards, he just Googled it to see what happened, and an ornate clock called an Osberg clock came into his Google feed. Now, somebody could say, well, that's then proof that, because he didn't know about these clocks before, and that's then proof that he was really a reincarnation of this person he was in his experience he had. But there's also the possibility as well that perhaps he might have had the Antiques Road Trip on in the background, and or the Antiques Roadshow, not consciously. It could have been an Antiques Roadshow from years back, and someone put an Osberg clock on, they were talking about it, and he might have been doing something, not really paying that much attention. It goes into his subconscious. Under hypnosis, that bubbles up. That could be a possibility. It's very hard to say, yes, 100% that somebody has definitely had a past life, but one of the more compelling of the cases that I've had, Steve Mulligan, I don't know if you know about that one, but he had an experience of being in the flying corps, and his name was Sidney Sutcliffe. He was shot down over Cambrai in the First World War. And the details came out of where he lived in the Nook, which the house in Llandud now. His father, who was an entertainer, his entertainer stage name was Abraham, and all the different things that he did. Like he was saying things like you can see his father on the stage in like a sailor suit. Now there is certain pictures of his father in a sailor suit, but there's also a lot of things that was coming out as well which you can't find online. Like he said that he sometimes would go on stage with his father. You can't find that online. He said that his mother would be involved in the stage. That can't be found online. None of the photographs that are of Sidney Sutcliffe's father, he has a moustache. But they said for a period of time he grew a moustache, and the family were having a laugh and a joke. And also as well, when his dad went on tour, he would get things like glove puppets, and they had a little stage that they'd set up and do like a glove puppet show for the family. Those bits can't find online. So you can find certain things online, but what would be really great is if somebody came forward, because we did go to a local paper, we didn't really get much back from it. But if somebody then said, yes, he did have glove puppet shows. Yes, Sidney Sutcliffe did go on stage with his father at times, which isn't documented. That would be a little more than the cryptonesia that could be going on. So there's so many different things that it could be, and genetic memory is another one as well, because I've done a whole talk on the possible interpretations of paranormal interpretations of what reincarnation and past life experience could be, and also those skeptical as well. And there's lots of different things that can be going on.
One thing obviously you mentioned about you don't ask leading questions in this case of tell me about your whatever's coming through in terms of your past life, or what you can, is it in terms of what they see or visualize and things like that, whatever's coming through. But how common is it for somebody to give you specific names, dates, details that you could actually, or that either the client or yourself could actually dig into further down the line and to see if it's real or not? Is that a common thing, or is it just very general scenes and scenarios that people tend to tell you?
It can be quite common that people come up with the names, and afterwards people email afterwards, I found this and this. I would love to do more research, and like some of the historians that we saw at Parameet and are on television, I would really love to properly do something and get some of the historians to dig up the information, because there are times when it seems completely random and it's difficult to find it out. There's times when, yes, they can find all this information by searching on Google and those sorts of things. The trouble is, as these people can find it on Google, you then go back to, is it cryptonesia or is it a genuine past life? So I want to look into this more, because it is fascinating. And people that come to me, I'm sure aren't making it up, because we know that the paranormal field can be open to fraud. But a lot of these people that come to me, they then say to me afterwards, I found this out and that matched up. And it seems quite bizarre that some of these people are quite shy about even showing the video to anybody of their friends or family. And it just basically is between me and then maybe one or two of their closest people in their life. It seems very strange that somebody would come to me, pay me some money to research it beforehand, to make it up, to not want it to go any further then. So, but, again, a lot of these people have done like Google searches. I've personally, and I'd love to do it, not had somebody that's come and said, I've been to the archives and I've really dug and I found this, which could have been no possible way of knowing, because I'd like to look into it more. But I'm busy with the next client that's come
Yeah.
in for past life regression, or next client that wants to have hypnosis for their phobia or their confidence that they need.
Yeah. Has there been any other kind of examples where what you've had come through, or what clients have told you, has really blown your mind in terms of like there must be more to this than, because obviously the whole thing of the whole idea of past life regression is to get this question of, have we lived before? Is there reincarnation? And that's very comforting for people who may be terminally ill, or going through a really bad time of it, and they're kind of worried and scared. But has there been any kind of other examples where at the end of the session you thought, wow, that's in terms of the level of detail, the level of information that's coming through, is something that's properly kind of surprised you, or made you kind of even more of a believer about reincarnation than anything else? Because you're kind of like very much kind of on the fence with you being open to, like somebody just mentioned, you're very open to other suggestions and things. But yeah, it's wonderful if you had any other kind of examples where it's really kind of fascinated you what they've said.
Another one that is on my YouTube channel is Radical Cartoons, Stella from Radical Cartoons. Her dates matched in with a famine that happened where she was staying in a convent. That was quite compelling. The clothes that she wore matched, again, what she was experiencing during that regression. So that was quite good. And she's because she's quite skeptical as well. She went down the Kryptonesia kind of route as well.
Yeah.
There have been some, that I've got, and there's also been some that haven't as well. On my personal channel, I would say the YouTube channel, I'd say the ones which are the two that I would say stand out that could be saying more is Steve Mulligan and also Stella. The other ones, maybe not. Again, some of the things match up, some of the things don't. I do have a collection which I'll have to reach out for these people, because I was thinking I've got some great compelling cases that people have had with me. But then when somebody comes in, I always make a promise as well that, unless you want me to shout, I'm not going to just suddenly shout out people's stuff. But there's some great ones there. And maybe I should reach out to them, and say, look, it's entirely your choice. If you don't want me to talk about it, I won't do. But it's really good. I'll change your name and everything, because I noticed a lot of these books, got some next to me, people say names have been changed, and all that. So that would be quite a good thing to do. So it's very hard to tell.
Yeah.
But my goal is to get involved more, hopefully in the future, with people that can do proper research into this as the historians, and see what comes out of it, really. Because I am pleased the way that I don't lead, because some people say certain questions like, and did you die in this spot? You don't ask that, you just keep going forwards. And then if they move forward and say, I can't see anything, that's a good indication that somebody's passed away. But there are certain things which do come out of the regression, which I find very interesting. Some people do experience the light as they pass over, but the majority of people experience themselves floating up from their body. The majority of people, I would tend to think, would go down the light route. And another thing which comes out a few times is when people go back into their body for another life, they say that it's like jumping through a funnel into their life. That's come out quite a few times. So again, it's nothing which is, that's the absolute proof, but it makes me think, well, that's interesting that people seem to go with that. When I know some of the children that Dr. Ian Stevenson looked into, they would say children say jumping through a hole, and then I was here. So when I hear that, I think, well, that's interesting. But yeah, I've got some interesting ones, but there's always different interpretations. There's close matches. There's some which are completely way off.
And you mentioned there's kind of certain things which are kind of very similar between different clients, but I'm just interested about if you have a particular religious belief, does their experience change depending on their religion?
It hasn't, but I tend to find people that do book me are relatively open to it anyway. I've not really had anybody who said I'm a devout Buddhist or
Mm.
I'm a devout Hindu. I think that people are just kind of more exploring more on the spiritual or open-minded
Yeah.
skeptic, which,
Yeah.
a skeptic is actually supposed to be open-minded anyway. So, but I think because the interpretation of skeptic has become a naysayer over the years, I think that, people tend to use the word open-minded skeptic, but people tend to have an openness to it. But I always say, whatever comes to you, just allow it to come, even if it doesn't make any sense and you think that possibly can't be right. I like people to say it because, again, it's the truth. It's the information which is bubbling up from their
Yeah.
subconscious mind.
And this is going back years ago now. When I was, when I was growing up, like I've said before, I've always had an interest in the paranormal. But I remember a book I read a long, long time ago called "The Children That Time Forgot," and I don't know, I think it's probably out of print now, but it was a whole book, and every single page, virtually every single page, was a different child around the world, recalling a previous life, remembering a girl remembering when they were a boy, or a child remembering when they saw Jesus, or a child remembering when there was a fighter pilot. And it's obviously based on some of the research that you've previously mentioned, perhaps, as well. And I found it really, really fascinating. But have you first of all ever hypnotized a child or do you just stay well away? Is there the kind of ethical considerations and things like that? It just seems that there's a lot of children who had these kind of recollecting things when they're from an early age.
I would absolutely love to explore children, even people who are in adults that might have said when they were. It's nothing that's come my way. I do see children, as long as their parents are here, for being fussy eaters or feeling underconfidence in school. I would say children coming through a quite small number of my clients, and it tends to be from parents that are literally at their wits' end and just want to try something else,
Yeah,
because they can't just keep eating chips their only meal. You're going to get unhealthy. So it's that sort of thing that would come through. But when I give my talks, I often get parents that will say, my child used to say this, it's always a bit too late. And they kind of at the point would say, oh, that's very nice, and then, and they sort of say, but now I've got more into this, now their memories have faded. I'd always be very interested in seeing if I could rehypnotize those children, because I do find that really fascinating.
yeah,
I know people say that children have imaginary friends, and and are very good imaginative people. I think there is a slight difference, though, wherever the information is coming from, because when a child will talk about a past life, and this is from television programs I've seen. I've not sat down like Ian Stevenson and had a conversation with any of these children, but when you see them, they're very serious. They're almost like young adults.
yeah,
They're very mature for their age, and they will talk about completely solemn face, what happened with them when they died or where they used to live. Whereas when children usually are in their fantasy sort of stage, there's more of a lilt in their voice. They're sort of smiling. They're really enjoying reliving their fantasy. So that's interesting. But yeah, that's saying, because I still got a long way to go in my research into this, so that will be hopefully something that will happen. If anybody's watching this and would be curious, then yeah, I'd love to.
One other thing which is always kind of past life regressions. There's a kind of this ongoing joke that why you'll probably get comments like this as well, but there's always like, well, why when these past lives that people supposedly have, why are they always of famous people? Why are they always of Napoleon, or I fought in the Battle of Trafalgar, or those kinds of things? Just want to kind of like say, how common is it for people to suddenly come out with, oh, I was Mary Queen of Scots, or I was such and such? Is that, does that ever happen, or is that just Does that never happen?
Well, once or twice I've had people with more interest in lives. Steve Mulligan, Sidney Sutcliffe is one of them. I have had two people that claim to be on the Titanic, but I've done far more people where it's just a usual life, that everyday person, kind of mundane, with all its joys and all its misery that normal life can give. I think there are very few people that actually are a reincarnation or claim to be a reincarnation of a famous person. And if there is such a thing as reincarnation, there's no reason why famous people aren't going to reincarnate. They've got to reincarnate. But it's always important to realize that the media like an interesting story. So if somebody kind of wrote a press release into one of the papers saying, I think I was Napoleon, or I was another famous person, Martin Luther King, or whoever it's going to be, that's going to go to the media. If you sort of said, I was a chimney sweep, or I was a farmhand, it's not going to set the people who's writing the article punching the air with excitement, saying, I'm going to write about somebody who went and collected corn every day. So that's why the famous ones get noticed, but it's a very, very small amount.
Yeah. I'm going to start going to people's questions. And so, because like I say, it's one of those areas which I think generally people find fascinating. So it's going to go through as many as I can about the next 10, 15 minutes or so. So Boo's saying, what's your opinion of Darren Brown? Do you believe he genuinely hypnotizes people?
Yes, yeah, I like Darren Brown. Darren Brown is a showman. He uses magic, showmanship, hypnosis. Also, as well, like I was saying, with Darren Brown, he's very good. I mean, I don't know exactly because I've not sat with him when he does the selection process, but he's very good. People that are going to be on his shows, incredibly suggestible people. As I was saying, that I have people that actually go into a past life and they've come out after and say, that actually felt real to me. They're probably 1 in 1,000. When I was on Help My House is Haunted, we had Barry Guy walking around in a building with his eyes closed, seeing what it was like in 1825. So the majority of people aren't going to be that suggestible, but Darren Brown and his team are very good at picking the people, wheeling them out, and because when you have the stage, we spoke about stage hypnotism, stage hypnosis show to begin with, you usually get a load of volunteers, usually about sort of 30 to 60 people on the stage, and they get whittled down to about 12, sometimes less than 12 at the end of it, because they're seeing who is most suggestible. But then if you're really going to the sort of things that Darren Brown does, they've got to even be more suggestible than that again. So he's very good at picking that. But yeah, absolutely. He is a hypnotist and a good one.
One from iMoogle saying, virtuosos like Steve Vai, Paganini, anyone with outstanding natural ability, could this be familiar from a previous life? So in terms of these child prodigies, do you think it's just purely hard work, or do you think it's actually something from a previous life that they inherit?
It could be a previous life. It could be hard work. Somebody who's a prodigy, I like to hypnotize them. Let's see what comes up.
Yeah. Wonder if Brian, do you personally do any research to determine if the past life was a real person, and where do you go for the information?
I've done little bits, very small bits, and that's just been through Google and online. And again, when people have done their research and got back to me afterwards, it's been Google and online. But the next step for me is really kind of seeing because I also love history as well. So working with someone who deals with history and a historian will be a next step for me. As I say, because when I have my clients afterwards, I edit the video and give it to them, so it's a nice package that they've got. I also have clients that come to me for classic NLP and hypnotherapy, neuro-linguistic programming. I don't just see the person and let them go. I record the hypnosis during the time, then I edit it afterwards to make sure it's a really nice, clean sounding copy, remix music back into it so it's even more relaxing for them, and I give them a summary of the session, a way forward of the session, so that keeps my time as it is. So yeah, I haven't had the time to be able to research it. But someone like Penny Morgan, who was on a couple
Yeah.
of weeks back, that would be somebody to get involved if she's not busy, and I'm sure she's got so many plans. She will be very busy, but she's got so many plans of her own. But maybe watch this space.
Yeah, that'd be really good. Monique saying, have you ever met somebody who had no previous life?
A couple of times. It does happen. Again, as I said, I'm not like marked all the way down and got the exact, but it feels around about 95% of people do get a past life. Also, as well, when I do the sessions, there are many ways of allowing somebody to access the subconscious to the past life. My favourite one is the corridor method, where each of the doors represents a past life. There could be people with 2 doors, 7 doors, some a lot more. But a couple of times, I take them and there's no doors. And then you try and find other ways going through and not get anywhere. And you then say, just asking your subconscious mind, how many past lives have you had? And they reply, none. And you think, great, what am I going to do for the next hour then? That's very rare, but it does happen.
We did mention this briefly in terms of a bit earlier on, but Mandela and Ramberson, did he already cover how he does the regression? So we've talked about it briefly, but in terms of the actual, if they come to you in terms of the length of time, how long does it take to actually get into before they can start recalling their past life? Is it like a quick process? Or is it different depending on how the people you've got?
Each person's different. I'd say usually to get somebody into hypnosis, for me, is usually about 10 minutes. You can do it shorter than that, but I kind of like really making sure, really watching people, and if I think they could go a bit deeper, add more suggestions in. As I said before, you could literally hypnotize people in seconds. If you go on YouTube and watch instant hypnotic inductions, you can see somebody go out like that. I like it to be a nice, pleasant experience for my clients. And the last thing I want to do is somebody's coming to me to enjoy themselves or to have healing or to get a really interesting past life. I'm going to suddenly grab hold of them and jerk their arm and shout sleep and put them out. It's not going to be the most pleasant way of people going to hypnosis, but things like that work very well as a demonstration. Again, I have done it very rarely, but most of the time I will take my time with someone. Then the hypnosis part of the questions is usually about an hour. If it's a very short life, then I will add more. Like one of my demonstrations, I had to do another life because I asked them to go to their earliest memory, which was running out of a house straight into a lake where they drowned. That's not going to give you an awful lot of information. So I then went to another life and got more information from it.
Dan saying, have you ever heard of someone describing a past life that appears to be from a time that we are not familiar with?
Yes, I've had big creatures before now coming out,
Okay.
and I think that's a bit interesting. I did hear there was like giant ants, because that seemed to be what it was in one of them, in in sort of like prehistoric times, like even before like man existed. But again, I will ask people to just say what they're experiencing, because they could come from the information from a past life. It might even be some bizarre parallel universe. I tend to not shut myself off from a load of different possibilities. So I say, if it seems bonkers, but that's the information that's coming to you, I want to hear it, not you hold it back, because at the end of the day, you'll have an experience, and that's what your subconscious mind is telling you.
I can always rely on Brian. Brian here is the one for the questions, I tell you. So I'm just going to go for one of the what Brian's brilliant for questions. This is a big one. If real, wouldn't this require an incredibly complex system? Example, who is in charge of or determine what soul goes where, and how do you account for a growing population size? Are souls created? There you go. You've got about 5 questions in one there.
Absolutely. So I just allow what people experience. What I have heard is that there are far more souls out there than there are human bodies, so that there's more opportunity for these souls to go in and experience different lives. So that's one of the arguments, that there's more souls than human beings. Other people sort of say that sometimes souls can split as well, which people might say, oh, that's so ridiculous. But if you think about a potato, you can split a potato in half. Then you plant the two different halves of potato, and then you get two lots of sprouts that grow up from that. So it's a possibility. Parallel universes come up as well. That's another one that some people say. So you can either think there are these possibilities, or you can think, yeah, that's a problem. But it's an answer that is one of those questions that at the moment it's no definitive answer. But then again, as I said earlier on, there's no definitive answer if you look at why do we sleep.
Yeah. Brian's got another question again here, but actually I've seen this once or twice in the chat as well. Talking about ever got a future life progression, memories from a future time.
Yeah, I've done that occasionally. People ask for it. I mean, this is a theory, and I have no proof of this, but I think future life is a little bit like predicting the weather. The further out in time you go, the more inaccurate it can be. Whether people are tapping into the field because they sort of say that time is actually a ball of string and we only perceive time as we're seeing it right now. But I kind of think that it's a personal thought of mine, is that there is some sort of logic to linear working that happens, because when you hear these children that talk about another life, they always say about a time that was in the past. They're not talking about in the future when there's flying cars and those sorts of things. But I've certainly done it because people have wanted me to take them forward to a future life. One of my past lives, which I then copied because with permission, put it on my YouTube channel with a lady called Pat. She had what seemed to be a parallel life, one going on at the same time, which could potentially be, if the soul splits, as I was saying earlier, that's what she was picking up on. But as I sort of say, the longer I do this, the more questions I have than anything being answered.
Great one here from Julie saying, do you have a past life?
So, yeah, I did past lives during my training. The very first one I did, I was a carpenter in the Lake District. I was particularly proud about the way I could do dovetails. Have I become a good carpenter from that previous life in this life? Absolutely not. I'm a hopeless carpenter. I'm really not very good at woodwork. Hunter-gatherer time. And another time I was in 1960s Russia. I kind of done little bits of them listening to my own hypnosis for now as one in sort of Roman times. So yeah, that's what's going. What was very interesting about the hunter-gatherer, my name was Ranuk, and unlike the other past lives, everything was slightly blurred. So I'm thinking, if that was a genuine past life, maybe my eyesight was a little bit long, a little bit short.
I know I will go back to questions, but just that another thing, just from what you were saying, just popped into my head. If you was having a regression where you, like you mentioned, have been a person from Russia from the 1960s, during that regression, are you able to speak Russian, or have you come across Russian and actually something that you can't possibly know or be able to do in your waking life?
Some hypnotherapists have claimed that has happened. Again, you have to, if they're a client that has come through and it's not deliberately going any further, I'd say that's very interesting. For me, I didn't start speaking Russian. I'd have loved to have said, yes, I did start speaking Russian. Yeah. For me, it was an understanding of what I was doing and feeling. But what I was hearing was like I had a Russian film on. So I could hear it and I could say, it sounds a bit like this. Again, what would have been brilliant, is to be, because that one wasn't recorded. This was just during one of my training events.
Yeah.
Have to do it again, maybe. But somebody to say, well, it sounds like me repeating what I hear, because I have no idea what anything in Russian sounds like at all. And then have somebody who's good at interpreting to then say, actually, these words are coming out, or he's talking nonsense there. Again, there will probably be some hits and misses, because it'll be like watching a French film and then saying, what did they say? And then, well, you didn't quite pronounce it right. But I think there would be some sort of idea of what it could be, and there would be a sentence. So it would be several what it could be, rather than just like man, tree, porridge, that sort of thing. It would have a complete kind of structure to it. So I'm always up for experimenting with other people, and if anybody wanted to, and if anybody going to speak Russian, I'm more than willing to go back to that time and give it a go.
I think it'd be fascinating. One very quick one from Jan. She thinks basically you're trying to hypnotize people with your lava lamp in the background. So Jan's saying, when you go, can you please do a live link up of your lava lamp? She's hooked.
Okay, yes, I will do.
Right, let's have a quick. I'm literally just going really, really quickly through down here. Have I ever been regressed? Jane's asking. No, I haven't, Jane. No, I've never been regressed.
Would you like to?
Oh God, not right now. Well, the thing is, I think I would be open to doing it. I've got to say, I do find that the topic fascinating, but I imagine like most people probably, the reason why I mentioned it earlier is, but I think quite a few people would be wary of, God, what am I going to reveal? Because this whole idea of, well, what if some kind of weird part of my subconscious starts blurting out these details?
Yeah, it won't.
But that's the thing in terms of, I can see why people might get quite nervous about doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. But I do put people at their ease, and every single person that I've spoken to after my pre-talk, sometimes they're still a bit nervous, but they say there was nothing to be nervous about, and they absolutely loved the experience of what they had. And also our hypnosis, the natural states that we get into anyway. Think about when we drive somewhere and you think, I'm not working today, and I'm driving to work, and I'm supposed to be going in the opposite direction. At that moment, you've gone on autopilot. You're in a form of hypnosis. Another thing is when we're watching films or we're reading books, we get so involved in it, and one of our favourite characters ends up dying in it, and you start feeling a lump in your throat. It's actors, but at that moment, you're so drawn into it because you're in a state of hypnosis. And another good thing as well, you get catalepsy in really deep hypnosis. And if you've seen people at the cinema that are eating popcorn, there's a particularly intense bit, and they're like then they're stuck. And that happens, and that's something called catalepsy, which happens in very deep trance, and people go into it because they're so absorbed with the film.
Wow. It is a fascinating subject. Looks like I was saying it's a fact that energy can't be created or destroyed. It makes sense the energy transfers into new lives, and occasionally the next life remembers the previous. That's how I understand it. Do you have any kind of I can't comments about energy and going from one life into the next?
I think that is a really good way of explaining it. And also as well, I don't know if you've plugged it into the Ethernet cable, but for me, I'm using Wi-Fi. That signal's here. We can't see it. It's some form of like waves and energy. So the soul going through into someone else's body, into their cell memory, I think is a great way of explaining it. So thank you.
Mrs. Geek saying, Paul, would you let me be filmed doing a regression? I'm totally up for trying this, she says.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, sounds good.
There you go, straightforward. Let's have a look. One from Phil. If we are returning souls, endlessly living lives, then what are ghosts?
Some people might get stuck. Again, I'm sort of saying the theory of things, kind of some theories, some kind of bits that people have come out with when they're doing the life between lives. So maybe some souls get stuck, or they go on. There's a choice. Again, maybe it's a memory that stays behind, and then the soul goes through. Maybe the soul then splits, so you still have part of you which is a ghost, and part of you which is going through to another life, because there's all the people now watching us. We're in front of them, but we're not actually in front of them. We're somewhere else. So it could be the energy of people that have gone through. So yeah, there's I could give 100 different answers to that one.
Well, I know. I mean, there are some really deep ones. I mean, Tanya here's got another really deep one. Sorry.
I know, no, I like
Just
them
saying,
deep.
is it true that we can live different lives at the same time?
According to the books and some of the research that I've done, it's possible. Again, it's keeping on researching, and I think just as well, you went into like the skeptical side of things. I think what I really like about Ian Stevenson's work, he basically dedicated his life to researching this, and I think if it's hauntings, past life regressions, I think what best thing someone can do is literally dedicate to this subject, look at it, and even if you think that it's going in a certain direction, keep looking at it. Don't be afraid of the other side of the argument. And then when you're about sort of 70, 80, after a lifetime of looking into it, then the thoughts and feelings, because it's a deep subject. And it's a question that we all are interested in. What happens when our physical bodies are no longer here in the physical realm anymore, and we go off into, does everything just stop, or do we continue living in some form or several forms if the soul splits?
Just very quickly, Mike, thank you so much. You are incredibly generous, man. Thank you so much for the gifted memberships. If you've got a gifted membership from Mike, bless it. Make sure you say a big fat thank you to Mike. Give him lots of love, guys, in the chat. But Mike, thank you so much for that. And I can see that Kenny Biddle has been given a membership. So you better. I'm sure Kenny will have lots to say about this because he's about one of the most skeptical men I know, I would say. It's going to go through. So yeah, I'm just going to go through kind of any more questions. I'm just trying to. Oh, and who else? Oh, and Julie's donate and gifted membership. Thank you much as well, Julie. Thank you. Just going to go through on here. It is, like I say, a absolutely fascinating subject, and like I said, that we could go down so many paths and avenues and things like that. You've already mentioned you have an interest in the paranormal. Is there, in terms of your feelings about the paranormal plus your job in this field, has there any been kind of crossovers that you found particularly interesting?
Again, that it's looking into what happens when we die. Also, as well, I have used hypnosis for people in St. Breville's Castle, was one of the places I did it at, where you go into hypnosis and you pick up on potentially some of the spirits that were there, or some of the people that lived in the place. I know that a lot of people came up with Mary. Again, that's just a name that kind of popped up a few times. But again, that's something I'm thinking about doing. I'm really hoping to do something with haunted objects. Again, that's going to be a watch this space. That's something that I'm in the process of arranging at the moment. But that would be really good to see if people can tap into, because if everything's waveforms and energy, by slowing down our brainwaves, going into hypnotic state, are we able to pick up more on, inanimate objects that claim to be haunted?
And talking of haunted objects, well, objects in general, one Joe saying, have you ever regressed someone who has objects they believe they made in the past?
No, but that would be, I'm trying to think. I've done so many of these, actually, that maybe somebody has earlier on. I don't think I have, but I've done quite a lot of regressions, so I can't remember that off the top of my head, but that would be a real good one. And one, Joe, if it is, I'll comment on, because I do comment on some of my YouTube videos. I will let you know if I find any of my papers.
Yes, he's saying that I ask as I have some stone cannonballs that I'm convinced that I made. How cool would that
set up? Yeah,
there you go. Exactly. Let's go back a little bit. Let's go back. I am going to be going back and try and make sure I try and cover as many. I know we've gone over slightly. I hope you don't mind.
I'm fine about it. I'm fine about it.
Brian said, have you ever regressed a family to see if they were a family in a past time? That's a really good question.
Yeah, it does. It does happen. People meet each other. I haven't actually regressed a family, but I've had people that, are interested, small groups, and say that they've met each other in the past. Again, that'll be something I'd like to test and look into even more, because I think that there's so much that we could do in testing this and going deeper into it. But yeah, that's quite often you get parents in one life, and when it's the next life, they're the child, etc., and the kind of roles are reversed. So yeah, it happens, but then I'm very cautious where I ask it. Sometimes it would naturally come up in a hypnosis session with someone, but I'm very careful not to implant that, because if somebody's in hypnosis and I say, is there anybody you recognize from this life? One, it takes them slightly away from that past life experience. And also as well, when you're in hypnosis, it's pace and leading. So a good level of rapport has happened between yourself and the client. So if you're then going to put that in, it might be, oh, are there someone? And then because the brain does like filling the gaps of certain things. So I try and eliminate as much as possible of that gap filling that might be going in. I haven't really gone into it this time, but I did mention it in the talk I gave at PAMIT and some of the other talks. Yeah. Got a book by Roy Hunter, and he was hypnotized because he had, he's a hypnotist, Roy Hunter, and he was hypnotized by another hypnotist who was very interested in the UFO phenomenon, because Roy, in his childhood, had a near-death experience seeing the bright white light. The hypnotist that was so into the UFO phenomenon said to Roy, now go through the light and let me know if you see a UFO there. That's an absolute leading question. And because that deep level of rapport happened, Roy went through, saw a UFO and had more of a classic abduction experience. Later on, he had a hypnosis session, hypnotherapy session with someone who just guided rather than led. And it was more of a proper near-death experience with what he felt was the angel of death in front of him. So again, I'm not sort of saying that was definitely, one was fantasy, one was definitely the truth, but you're stacking up the likelihood of the one that's been guided rather than led, of it being more truthful.
Beardo's asking, have you ever had a total skeptic be convinced otherwise? I think he's put himself forward for this one.
Let's see what happens there. I mean, I have the fantastic, and again, I have so much time for this man. Steve Higgs, Higgy Pop, he came and had a regression with me, and you can see that experience on my YouTube channel. He also wrote about it on his blog. So that's very interesting. But Beardo, we'll set that up. I'll be more than happy to do that.
I think that definitely needs to happen, Beardo. If I've got to do it, you've got to do it, man. Kaza, thank you so much for the 20, I think Australia dollars. Thank you so much. Absolutely fascinating. Thank you, Justin and Paul. Thank you. Thank you for donating. Thank you for helping. Let's go through on here. Kenny Biddle says someone said complete skeptic, and he was summoned. I'd love to get your thoughts, Kenny, on past life regression. I'm quite sure you're going to go down the skeptical route, funnily enough. Let's have a little look on here. Brian saying, have you ever got someone who does say 20 years earlier? I mean, very recently, not hundreds of years ago. So ever get someone who does say 20 years earlier? Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah.
Well, Steve Higgs, funny enough, his regression experience, he still remains skeptical from it, but he certainly got a regression. And you can read about it on his blog and see about it on my Past Life with Paul Goddard YouTube channel. And he started earlier. I think he might have started, I can't remember when it was. No, it's been a while since I've done that one, but he started early on in his sort of late 20s, if I remember this rightly. And then he passed away when we did the calculations. It would have been a few months before he came back into this life. So he didn't hang around that long. So it's not like 20 years before now, but the moment of passing can be quite close to when the next person is born. Ian Stevenson and Dr. Jim Tucker, who went around the world investigating children with spontaneous past life claims, they found it was on average 18 months before somebody came back. It doesn't mean that's the short time it's going to be before somebody comes back into another body. It's just the average, and it'd be like, what's the average wage of someone in the UK? It's going to be someone who's a massive and somebody's on a very small wage. So somewhere between the two. But that's what they found out tend to be around 18 months.
Phil is saying, if we keep returning to our new lives with new families, does that mean we are related to no one or to everyone?
Probably everyone. I highly recommend you you read the short story "The Egg Andy Weir." It's a made up story, but I think if you act as if it's true, then something truly magical can happen to that. But yeah, I mean, I think that I've had times that people have been related, and there's times when it doesn't seem to be related at all. It can be either.
Just one question for myself. I don't. I mean, I'm not a religious person or anything like that, but I do know for those religions that believe in reincarnation. So Buddhism is one particularly. That obviously they believe that if you live a wholesome life, a good life in this life, then you'll be rewarded in the next life, and you know, and vice versa in terms of if you were, you know. Badly behaved or poorly behaved, or if you ate meat, or if you killed animals or whatever, then actually that you go down. Is there anything, I kind of, it's a lovely idea that whole idea of reincarnation in terms of, if you're a good person, you go to a better life. Have you ever come across anything that actually, there's any kind of truth in any of that from from what you've come across?
Well, I respect all religions and their beliefs, but from my own personal findings when I've done the life between lives, it seems to be that there's like this. It's very difficult for people to explain in that state because it's kind of you're trying to explain stuff not on a physical level anymore. It's like being connected to so much and like not really having any form. And what tends to sort of come through with people is that there comes a moment that they think to themselves in this life between lives, I want to go back because to experience the human things like the touch, the embraces, the getting to really know people on a different level, the wonderful food we can eat as well, that sometimes comes through. And it doesn't seem to be that I've had a really good life, so I'm going to have a better life this time. Plus, as well, if somebody comes to me and they're having a lot of pain in their life for whatever reason, I think that it seems awfully not ethical to suggest that is why they're having a bad life because they've been wicked in another life. It tends to be more if there's something carried over, if somebody's like attacked and their dying moments were being struck over the back of the head. That's why they get lots of migraine headaches. Ladies, sometimes a husband that would beat them because they viewed an opinion in the past, because you could actually beat a husband could beat at one point sorry if this is a trigger to anybody, but beat a wife with a stick as long as it was no bigger than the width of the thumb. Sometimes people have had like regressions like that and don't voice their opinions in this life. That's what they tell me anyway, because in a past life they were beaten when they tried to voice their opinion. So that tends to be kind of the more connection rather than somebody who was really good. Some people that I've had in hypnosis have been not very nice people. Most of the times people are kind people. But some of them haven't been nice people in a past life. And I tend to find the ones that are happy to go to that life where they weren't the best person, are very spiritually open and involved and are happy to go to that dark place because they've done enough self work on themselves.
Yeah. Just going to do one or two last questions, and then I think we'll probably have to wrap it up. Because, like I say, I know we can just carry on talking for ages.
I'm enjoying this.
There's so many different avenues. Monique saying, if it takes 18 months to go to a new life, then are we not seeing our loved ones who passed before us when we die?
Well, you could have did the soul split, so part of you then comes back, but 18 months is the average. I know there was is come back into the feed again. It's Carl, I think his name was, a boy that he didn't have much time, and he was in the Twin Towers when that went down and got reincarnated. It tends to be what from what people have said during the past life experiences that they've had with me is that there comes a moment when they feel they want to go back, and 18 months could, like, somebody could be like 2 days.
Yeah.
Somebody else could be like 140 years. We're only talking about an average. It's not every single person will be 18 months. Again, certain religions will say certain times, but I tend to just put that aside and allow people to come up with what they experienced during a regression.
Right, here's one from Kenny. We'll do this as the last question because you brace yourself. There we go.
Okay.
This is one from Kenny. Right, if reincarnation is meant to improve upon a past life, why is the memory wiped? If you can't remember what you screwed up, how are you supposed to improve?
The subconscious mind is a wonderful thing, and I think if people did know whether it was that you did go through to a previous life, and you do reincarnate, or you go through to an afterlife where it's all love and light afterwards, there would be so much, there wouldn't be any doubt in anybody. And I think even the strongest believers, there's that little bit of doubt that stops you from going, why bother in this life, and just basically give up. So I think there's a certain importance that memory is wiped. So you just think, well, I'm jumping off and just going straight into the next one. It stops people from doing that. Some people say they come back and choose specific lives with certain hardships to learn lessons. That personally doesn't come through during my sessions, but there is that argument that some people say anyway.
Right. There was a little comment from Beardo saying, would Paul be up for kind of videoing? There we go. Where it is. There we are. Look, Beardo saying, Kenny, that's odd. I wonder if Paul would be up for us filming this of what if we do meet. You do, obviously, you mentioned anybody who client comes to you video in terms of obviously the whole session, in terms that they can take home and keep privately and things like that. So I know that's something you do anyways, but if anybody's interested in getting a past life regression, how can they go about doing it and contacting you and so on and so forth?
Thank you. So I offer them online and in person. Online I use Skype. I just send a Skype link shortly before the session, record it, download it, send it back. If somebody comes to my home in Gloucester, where I've got the therapy room, I record it onto this Facecam I'm using at the moment, and I'll stick a couple of microphones in, lapel mics, make sure the person that's hypnotized is mic'd up. Because sometimes as well, people speak very quietly in hypnosis. Yeah. Actually, most of the time speak quite quietly. So with it being next to the microphone, then if they're whispering, I've got it set to auto at that stage, it will adjust and pick up what the person is saying. Then afterwards, I then put it on the computer. It's filmed in high definition, so the file is massive. So I will still be in high definition, but it will be compressed a bit. I'll just take off the beginning, because unless somebody particularly wants to watch 10-15 minutes, just somebody getting more and more sleepy, people just want to get straight into the regression. So I send that off, but also conduct sessions at certain venues. Has to be right, a nice private space, like at Parameet. I took people in for that. So I do hypnosis and NLP and hypnotherapy with all the work that goes into that. That's £90 a session. Past life regression is £60 a session, but I do discounts if I'm at a particular venue doing it for that one. But that's kind of what happens. And then I've got the recording I can send people, and it's great to have the recording, because there is something as well which we didn't go into called pareinesia, which is crediting more evidence than is actually there. Magicians, when they do their magic tricks, people watching the magic tricks will think it's more impressive than it really is, because the mind loves creating more things. That they've done mock robberies and got a load of witnesses, and each of the witnesses will describe the same robbery in a completely different way because of the pareinesia effect. So that's why I make sure that it's recorded, so that somebody can go back to and make sure what they say is actually what is happening. Because I know some people that have had hypnosis with me, and I've heard the pareinesia effect going on because they've not watched the recording back of them. So watch the recording back, and then you get exactly what you said.
I just wanted to mention this from Kenny because I think it's a really good idea. This one, he's just saying if this meeting can take place, whether that's between you and Kenny or you and Beardo, can that be done on a live? And he says, I think being able to fact check the information that's coming through in real time would be very informative to us all.
Absolutely. You know, I'm someone who wants to do this for the right reasons. You know, I've had regressions which are kind of like I did have one. You know, sometimes they're so spot on. As we were saying, it's scary. But I've had people as well. Like I had one lady who was working on the canal with her husband in her past life. I asked what your names. She replied Rosie and Jim. My face fell at that point. It was a very compelling past life. The kind of work they did would be very similar to what somebody would have during that time. And just because there was the famous children's show, Rosie and Jim, doesn't mean there was never a Rosie and Jim on the canal. But sometimes people can just insert little bits of memory from this life into a past life. But, you know, I like to do it for the right reasons. So I don't want to just see it like, I'll do it as long as everything comes out as being, you know, it's found out. I like to explore. Maybe this one shows that it's very compelling. Doesn't mean I'm going to stop there. You know, there might be one less compelling. Just keep on exploring, and, you know, find out what is really going on. And it's a question that, you know, I think maybe some of us don't ask, but we all like to know what happens when our time on this earth comes to the end. And I think it's a fascinating subject. So absolutely fact check it. And I don't ever want to fudge the evidence that comes out from a hypnotized subject just to fit in and make it seem so compelling. I like to get to the truth of what's happening to that individual in the regression.
I have a sneaky feeling you're going to get a few requests after this from people watching it, just like because it is a fascinating subject, and that I'd imagine that there's not many people that where this doesn't really appeal to them, where they're thinking, you know, because if they're open to the paranormal or they're open to reincarnation, to get a past life regression and to then recall events or recall names, dates, faces, places, all of those kinds of things, I think is genuinely fascinating. And I can already see people going, "Oh, this is going to make this would be really good."
Excellent.
And also the Rosie and Jim thing, weird stuff like that does happen. I used to live next to a guy. My next door neighbor was a guy called Ken. He was married to a lovely lady called Barbie. So Barbie and Ken lived next door to me.
Wonderful.
Weird stuff does happen. Anyway, Paul, thank you so much. It has been, like I say, 1 hour and 25 minutes. I know I apologize we've gone over an hour, but
I've loved every moment of it.
I think we just needed to have that. You know, I knew that there'd be lots of questions from people, and it is a fascinating subject. Thank you for being so open and so kind of candid and things, and been actually your take on things. It's just been wonderful, actually, and I like the fact that you're kind of open to suggestions and open to even the skeptics out there who kind of open to kind of going, yeah, okay, that's fine, we can do that.
It's a fascinating subject, and it always creates friendly debate. You know, that's what it's got to be. Not challenging each other, but a friendly debate. And I think it will always have people asking questions. So it's something I love talking about. And thank you for asking me on here tonight.
I think there's lots of just very quickly. There's lots of people very interested in your hair, and
Right.
you know, Kenny's just like, how does he get his hair to do that? And then Beardo earlier was just like, how can you make grey look so good?
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you.
But anyway, thank you so much, Paul. Yet again, it's been fascinating. So yeah, wonderful to have you on. Cheers. Thank you so much. Right. Wow, I don't know about you guys, but I thoroughly enjoyed that chat. Yeah, it's I know, like I say, if in the future, whether it's me being regressed or Beardo getting regressed, I think it's something. I think Kenny Bedell should get regressed, and we can check what he says. Try and fact check his stuff. That'd be amazing. I'd love to get Kenny to be regressed. Yeah, it's been so good. I've loved it. My voice is going, but hey ho. Next week. This has been the big one for me because I'm so pleased that Professor Chris French is going to be on next week. Anybody who's watched Uncanny in the UK or been onto any of Uncanny's live shows, Chris French has been part of it. I met Chris French quite a while ago now at Goldsmiths, and he is an absolutely fascinating fella. He's he's probably on a par for Mr. Skeptic, on a par with Kenny Biddle, I'd say. Maybe even more so. I've got that's pushing it. But yeah, Professor Chris French is going to be on next week. It is going to be a really, really good chat. So please, 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 if you've liked it and you're looking forward to it and you haven't shared this out yet, then yeah, please do. Like I say, share it by all means. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. If you'd like to be a member, thank you very much, by all means. But yeah, Chris French. If you don't know who Chris French is, look him up. He has been, professor at Goldsmiths, is an anomalistic psychologist, not a parapsychologist, and he has been in the field for quite a while, proving that the paranormal is essentially, there's a lot of claims that are not paranormal, and he has pretty much a good idea of how to explain the vast majority of things. Yeah, so that is next week. I will join you then. All right, guys. But thank you for joining me. Thank you for those that are subscribed and become members. Thank you so much. And yeah, that is next week. So until then, I'll see you next week. All right, guys. Bye-bye.